told you to quiet down, but now you wear a crown. Visionary queen with a spark.
Welcome to You Matter in Business with Ariel Faith, your brand, your story, and your success, because you matter in your business. Welcome back to You Matter in Business. We're talking again about the transitions. We talked about transitions, the empty nest syndrome last episode, and we're going to talk again about another phase of that is at this point in life, your soul feels like it says yes to things, but you still have a lot of those fears that basically say not yet, no. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. So there's moments in every woman's journey where basically her soul whispers, or sometimes it even shouts, yes, this is it. This is it. This is exactly what you should be doing. But before she can even take a breath, those fears rush in and thousands of reasons why not yet is safer. What will my husband think? What will my mom think? What will my children think? What if, right? The what if takes over. The what if space between your soul's yes and your fears not yet is exactly where your biggest growth lies. So that space between the yes, the not yet, and the what ifs that are in there, they're actually your friends. So rather than it, what if they think this? What if they think that? What if they think it's amazing? What if you succeed? What if you help other women avoid the problems that you had growing up, or the problems you had struggling through trauma and recovery and some of those things? Maybe you give hope to other women by sharing your knowledge, and they get that hope in their 30s instead of waiting until their 50s. So the what ifs are on both sides. So your soul, the part of you that has been there all along, like, and last time I talked about like the inner child, and I really think that's the core person you are, or your temperament, or your disposition, whatever you want to label it. I think there's certain things about you that have always existed. You haven't let them out. Sometimes they haven't been safe because your environment didn't appreciate those things, or whatever that might be. But at this point in your life, this transitional era of between your, 40s, 50s, 60s, somewhere in there is when it really starts to form. You really have the ability to recognize and listen when your heart is saying yes. It's saying yes to something bigger you now have time for. And there's a big difference between like a soul driven, some people call it a calling, or, using your strengths in some positive way. There's a big difference between that than a should driven obligation. You should go get a full time job now. You should. Why are you an entrepreneur instead of getting, the security of that full time work, or whatever those things are in your life, however they play out? So when your insides are basically saying, I'm so tired of corporate. I'm so tired of the rat race. I'm so tired of playing by everyone else's game. You show up, you do the work, you get it done. Do you get appreciated? 90% of the time, no. You get tired of that. So you stop looking for the check is not the compensation you need anymore in your life. The money is not the motivator. You need to fill something deeper. So why we say yes often comes way before the how we say yes. So what do I mean by that? When we say yes to something, there's still a lot of those fears. Those fears exist. We still don't know what we're actually getting ourselves into. We might have a clear idea. We might have a very, educated idea, but we still have those moments when we feel we don't know how to do something, right? But we didn't know how to raise children. We didn't know how to deal with teenagers, but we did it. We did it and we did it and we did it. We didn't know how to maybe get our car fixed in the middle of a snowstorm, and we did it. So, those years of experience of accomplishing things we did not know how and learning how, well, those fears are normal. That's not a stopping point, not knowing how. I don't know how to build a website. Well, I can watch YouTube and figure it out, or I can hire somebody. I can figure it out, right? So those points of resistance that we get, they don't have to be they don't have to be stopping blocks. They're just another step to step over. There was a time when I wanted to serve in a foreign country, and since I was a child, since I was in my teenagers, I always wanted to do that. And I couldn't do it the way I really wanted to do it, but I wanted to at least taste the experience and do some missionary-like work. And I had my youngest was still she was 8, 9, 10, so we started to learn a language. Didn't really know where this was gonna take us, but it really opened my heart and my soul to something way bigger than I expected. And I know there was a lot of fear. I had a lot of fear. My daughter had a lot of fear. She had anxiety issues anyway, so it really helped her cope with those fears because we were both going through them, not in a panicky way, but just in a, "Hey, this is scary, but we're gonna do this." So it wasn't a fear-based, "Oh, we can't do this because we're afraid." It's like, "Yeah, I know, I'm scared too. Let's go." It was more like adventure. So there's a time when our soul says, "Yeah, let's do this." And we know that we don't always have opportunities. You know, when I was doing this work, I learned more about myself and about life than I have, I think, in my goodness gracious, probably 20 years. Just in those 5 years, we were back and forth to different countries. And the stepping outside your culture, side note, but stepping outside of your own culture really helps you see that normal doesn't exist. Normal is all relative. What's normal in the United States is different than what's normal in Dominican Republic. What's normal in Ecuador is different than what's normal in the United States. What's normal in Florida is not the same as New England. And that's okay. My definition of me and who I am doesn't have to be defined by normal. In fact, I think normal is pretty boring, so I choose not to be. But sometimes we have that fear, that protective voice that says, that gets really loud. And when we understand that that fear is really just trying to protect us and we don't let it sabotage, that's kind of the key with dealing with that voice. So you have those greatest hits that you have in your mind, right? The ones you want to throw away. And you keep working on them, but you have those, "Not yet, you can't, you shouldn't, you can't, you shouldn't." And what do they really mean, right? What does any of that really mean?
Behind the lens, crafting tales and news.
Bring your marketing, your brand to life with storytelling and strategy. Cut through the noise with clear messaging and compelling visuals that resonate with your ideal client. We bring strategy, story, and visuals to help you with your marketing. Visit arieljoyfaith.com and schedule a consultation and see how we can help you bring your brand
No
to life.
selfies here, just genuine sight. Authenticity in every light.
It means, and we've talked about this before, but it means that fear means you are stretching outside of your comfort zone and you are about to have an adventure. Sometimes adventures have really crazy hiccups connected to them, but that's half the fun. I mean, sometimes they're scary. Sometimes you don't know exactly where you are in a city and you have to figure out how to get back to your house. Sometimes things happen, but you always find your way through. And I've obviously, I'm a strong believer in God, and when you work in service to him, your life really he guides you in those moments, especially when you're doing it for him anyway, and to help his people. It just becomes uh, uh, you're not alone in this journey, right? So your fear is normal, and it doesn't have to stop you. It's actually the emotion itself is a protection. It gets you to say, "Hey, I need to pay attention." Just like if you're walking in a city, I don't care where the city is, what country, doesn't matter. You're walking in a city and a bunch of people start coming out with clubs in their hands, you're gonna have a high level of reaction, and you better act on it because whatever is going on, you don't wanna be a part of it. You wanna get yourself out of there, right? That's a good fear. Does it mean I'm gonna stop in my tracks and just let them do whatever they do? No, you're gonna make an action. That emotion is gonna tell you to do something, and that's exactly what it's for. So, sometimes that fear can be one of the loudest things right before a breakthrough. So, remember that. If the fear is really loud, the fears or the reasons why you can't or you shouldn't or whatever, that's usually right before you're about to make a breakthrough. You're about to hit another level of comfort. So your resistance is going to be really high right at that threshold because it doesn't want you to pop through and you're about to. So keep on going. Don't let that fear stop you. Be smart. Again, there's fear we have to pay attention to, and then there's just fears that are driven by the unknown and the uncomfortable. So we have to kind of bridge the gap between these two things. So you have your soul saying yes, and you got your fears that are getting in your way. So, how do you honor both with your soul's timing and your fears' concerns? How do you do that? So you want to try to honor both of those things. So you have your soul wanting to do things, and you've got these fears or these concerns. Well, taking the action while you're still afraid is actually how you overcome the fear. The fear doesn't go away until you overcome it, until you do the exact thing that you fear. Let me repeat that. Fear doesn't go away until you do what you're afraid of. Now, that doesn't mean you walk in New York City to a neighborhood you shouldn't be in at 3 in the morning to overcome a fear. That's stupidity. There's a big difference. The fear is, I'm afraid to go alone on a trip. That's real fear because you've never done it before. You've always had people with you. So that's a legitimate feeling. But the breakthrough is when you pack up your car, you get it, and you go on the road, and you're an hour, 2, 3, 5, 6 hours away, and you did it. And you're not driven by fear anymore. You're actually living this dream or this thing you wanted to accomplish. There's a friend of mine right now who's doing something very, very bold, very, very, I just think it's amazing. She has a series of speaking events across the country. And she is a young woman with children, and her husband's on board. So it's incredible. But she has literally like a year of speaking trips all around the US. So rather than flying back and forth, coming home, flying back and forth, they decided to basically sell their home and basically go from Airbnbs across the country and just literally travel across the country and really see and show the kids the world and how beautiful the earth is. And the opportunity, does that kind of an opportunity come along very often? No. But the fear of that would hold many of us back. But think about how incredible that will be. There will be some times when they get a flat tire in the middle of Kentucky and they don't, things happen. But those moments are really moments that help build families. They help build people. So those are going to be moments of growth for them. And I just think that's a beautiful example of doing something that, sounds outrageous, but in the end of it, it's going to be an incredible experience for her and her family. So, and sometimes in these feelings when you are dealing with them, you want to take action, and then you have that it's just okay, where you're progressing even though it's, you're not getting perfect results, you're not perfectly ready, all those kind of things. That's fine because it's courage that you have. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about moving anyway. So the more courage you develop as a woman, the less games people will play on you because you see them. The less manipulation of others, of trying to be manipulative to keep you down, it won't work because you have courage. And when your courage is based on God, well, that's unstoppable. But this is really about like learning to navigate through this time of life when you now have opportunities. When you had children at home, you couldn't go off on a trip for a month. That just wouldn't be a very nice thing to do to kids. You could, but I mean, it might not have good consequences. So, next week we have a really exciting guest. She is a life, gonna try to remember how she worded it, but I'm not gonna do it. So you'll just have to wait for next week. But she's an expert on transitions in life, and she works with a lot of C-suite executives that are getting out of the corporate world and into entrepreneurship and some of those struggles. And her take on all this is really incredible because of her own experience, because of the things that she's lived through herself, and just what her clients she's worked with. It's really going to be exciting. It's going to talk more about all of the things I just kind of warmed you guys up on this. And we're going to get a little deeper into this. And it really does, it will be a couple of episodes that are pretty amazing. And I can't wait to introduce you to Rosie. And I'm not going to try her last name. You can check it out next week when I release her episodes. But for now, let's do some reflection. So ask yourself, why is your soul saying yes while your fears are still saying not yet, if that's happening? Ask yourself the why question. Because when you have the why, then you know how to get around it. If it's just fear, then you know you can do something about it. If there's a why that's legitimate, like I have no money, I have no cash, should I do this? Probably not. That's a different fear. So, and then just remember that if you're feeling a call or you're feeling your soul pulling you in a direction, but you need support navigating that fear, you know where to go. You know there's people that are willing to help you. There's a lot of online communities of women. There's a lot of places that get that support group that you have. And women who have gone through it themselves, who have navigated it, look to those older women in your community that are doing really well and are just living life to the full as you can in this world. And then ask yourself this: your gut or your soul's yes is trustworthy. The thing makes you alive and happy, your body knows it. It will show you by goosebumps and some other miscellaneous physical representations of when you hit something. Sometimes I'll be talking to someone and I'll get goosebumps. I call it a goosebump moment. But those moments tell you that you just hit on something very important, or they hit on something very important. And it's okay to just take the next step before you feel you're ready. Just take one little step, take the path, and feel the excitement, the fear, and all those things. But when you really allow the person you've always been to just be alive and enjoy moments of time, when you're present in those moments of time, it really does change everything. And it changes it for the better. It changes it when you're talking to another friend, because you're present when you're listening. You're not thinking about 20 other things. You're present. Like I'm currently right here talking to you through this podcast. I have a list of things to do, but it's not in my mind. It's what can I share with you today? So that was what I had to share with you today. And I can't wait to introduce you to Rosie next week. And then we will see you. So thank you again for listening to You Matter in Business. See you next episode. After all, it is your brand, your story, and your success, because I know that you matter in business. Thank you for listening to You Matter in Business podcast. Please follow, share, like, and comment. I would love to hear from you. This podcast is sponsored by Ariel Faith Storytelling Marketing and Your Brand Photographer. The show notes provide more information on how to contact Ariel and more information about this episode. Thank you again.
They told you to quiet down, but now you wear a crown. Visionary queen with a spark, lighting up the dark. Rediscover your own fire, chase the dreams that lift you higher. Redefine your role today, brand new in every way. Build your confidence through my lens, break the walls you put up since. Embrace your power, hear your roar. You are meant for so much more. That you are meant for so much more.